The general belief by Bible scholars is that Isaiah, the book of Isaiah, was not written by one person. They say Isaiah was written by two, if not three. So the first part, in chapters 1 to 39, which we are going to look at today, they said that was written by the original Isaiah, Isaiah of Jerusalem. They say the second part, 40 to 55, was written by a second Isaiah, whom they normally call Deutero-Isaiah. That's second Isaiah. And then the final 10 chapters, 56 to 66, they say was written by a third Isaiah, Trito-Isaiah. Trito-Isaiah. So that's how they have split the book of Isaiah. So their argument and other things is that the 1 to 39 was written about local events. You know, this is about the people in Judah, the people in Jerusalem before the final fall, which we saw in the book at the end of Jeremiah and the lament in Lamentations. So they said that is the original Isaiah. He wrote 1 to 39 because he spoke about local events. They say 40 to 55 was written by another Isaiah, Deutero-Isaiah, because he was speaking to the people in exile. So this was just like he was directing it to the people in exile. So they're saying, you know, first Isaiah, did he go into exile? So, and then the third Isaiah, Trito-Isaiah, they said that last 10 chapters, 56 to 66, was written after the exile, which was hundreds of years after Isaiah died. So he couldn't have known about this. So they say, so it must have been written by a third Isaiah. So they're thinking it might be the original Isaiah's disciples. So after the original Isaiah died, they took his works, or they just added to his work. You know, they just kept it as Isaiah's work. So they didn't bother to put their name to it. Now, this is what Bible scholars, theologians think. Now, what do you think? You know, I'll give you a chance here. You can comment in the comment section. You know, and let me know what you think about this. I don't want to give my own views just yet, but in this part we're going to look at 1 to 39, which is not disputed by theologians, it's not disputed by Bible scholars. So I have split it into the three parts: the 1 Isaiah, 2 Isaiah, and 3 Isaiah. So Isaiah has a message for Judah and Jerusalem. God is calling the heavens and the earth as witnesses to what he's about to tell them. The same way Moses called heavens and earth as witnesses when he was speaking to the children of Israel just before he died and before Joshua led them across the river Jordan into the promised land. This is in Deuteronomy chapter 4. And he says, the heavens and the earth are witnesses. If they break any of these law, then God will chuck them out of the land that they are going to inherit. So God is saying that even the farmers' animals, they know the voice of their owner and they go to him. They do not go to other farmers. But the children of Israel, they don't recognize his voice. They go to any god that calls them. So if Baal calls, they're off. If Dagon calls, they're off. The Queen of Heaven calls, they're off. So they don't even recognize their God. So basically God is saying that the animals are even wiser, because, you know, even in John 10:5, it says that a sheep will not follow another shepherd. They recognize the voice of the shepherd. And there's a clip on YouTube where you hear a farmer, a shepherd, demonstrating this. He calls out his sheep. They all come to him. He tells someone else to do the same. They don't even respond at all. God is saying here that Animals know the voice of their owners, but these people of mine don't even know my voice. They go after anyone. So God is saying that they're a rebellious nation. They have forsaken the Lord. They've spurned the Holy One of Israel. So we'll see the Holy One of Israel used constantly throughout the book of Isaiah. The Holy One of Israel, the Holy One of Israel. So it's used even in the first Isaiah, second Isaiah, third Isaiah, maybe. The Holy One of Israel is used constantly. So God is saying that their country is going to lie desolate. It will be burnt with fire. But God has left a remnant. Unlike Sodom and Gomorrah, where there was no remnant, God has left a remnant. He's, however, saying they should stop bringing their useless sacrifices, and he's sick of their festivals. They're just doing it, you know, just going with the flow. It's not from their heart. They offer the sacrifices and they still go off to bow down before other gods. So what is the point of that? That they should stop offering their sacrifices. He says he will not listen to their prayers. Their hands are full of blood. So they should stop lifting up their hands to him in prayer, because he's full of blood. You know, the blood of the innocent, the poor, the widows, the orphans, they're all crying out to God to help them because of the injustice which is being carried out. And if you remember also, when David wanted to build a house for God, God said, no, you can't build it because your hands have shed too much blood. Your son will have a peaceful reign. He can build the temple for me. And that was how Solomon ended up building the temple, even though it was the desire of David. But his hands were full of blood. So God is saying here that their hands are full of blood. They should stop lifting it up to them. So this is a lesson also for us Christians. If your hands are not clean, you go to church on Sunday, you raise up your hand, you have a tear drop down your... God is not listening. He has turned his ear away. He has turned his back. So you are just wasting your time. There are some Christians, they will not greet each other. They don't talk to each other in the church. But when they come to the church, they go and fall down flat in front of the altar. Who are they worshiping? God that they cannot see physically. And there's your sister, your brother right beside you. You cannot say hello. You know, you can't talk to them. When you see them coming, you look the other way. Pretend that you don't see them. And then you go to church, you go and raise up your hands. You are wasting your time. I can tell you that for certain. You are wasting your time. So God is saying that clean up yourselves. Do right by the widows, by the orphans, and by the poor. And then, though your sins be like scarlet, they shall be as white as snow. Though they be red as crimson, they shall be as wool. So just be willing and obedient, and you shall eat the good of the land. He's saying that Jerusalem is now a prostitute. You know, they just go after any god. They go after this idol. Tomorrow they go after that one. You know, prostitutes, they just go after any man because they want the money. They don't have a choice. They don't say, okay, I want a tall man. He must be dark. He must be handsome. They just go after any man, anyone who is willing to pay. Even some prostitutes, if an owner comes with his animal, like a dog, and says, okay, sleep with my animal and I give you double, some will do it. All they want is the money. So they don't have any preference to how they get the money. So God is saying that Jerusalem has now turned themselves into a prostitute. They're just going after every different God. And you can see, we saw in the last book where God says that even the heathen nations who worship idols don't do that. If they're with Baal, they stay with Baal. If they're with Dagon, they stay with Dagon. They don't swap one of their idols for another. But Jerusalem, the children of Israel, the children of the living God, do this. They just swap God around for whoever is or whatever is available at that time. He's saying that they should stop trusting in mere humans that just have a breath in their nostrils. There will be judgment on Jerusalem and Judah. Woe to the wicked. The gates of Zion will lament and mourn. And we saw this in the book of Lamentations. After Nebuchadnezzar had come and ravished the land, burned down the temple, destroyed the walls and the gates. In the Lamentations, Jeremiah was lamenting because this shouldn't have happened. Even if the people had listened to all the warnings, this wouldn't have happened. This was just unnecessary. It was absolutely needless. So he say on that day, so many men will be slain. There will be no men. There will be few men left. And you know, because it's the men who go out to fight, they are the ones who go out to battle. So the women, there will be so many women left. There will be few men, that even 7 women will hold on to one man and say, please just marry us. We will feed ourselves. You don't need to pay anything. No child support. Nothing at all. Don't even give me money for welfare, for food. Don't buy me clothes. I will look after myself. All I want is to be able to tell people that I am married. I have got a husband. When people ask, who is your husband, I can point at the man. So that's how it will get. It will get that bad, because in some cultures, even now, when a woman is of a certain age and she's not married, she is not respected in society. She's called an old spinster. She's she's looked down on. People wonder if there's something wrong with her. If she's still living in her father's house and they call a family meeting and they are talking and she wants to give in an opinion, you hear one person that will say, oh, you shut up, why don't you get married and go to your husband's house? You know, it's really terrible. And back then in that culture also, they didn't want to be known as old spinsters, so they would rather marry a man who will not look after them, not look after their children, but at least they can say that they are married. So it will get that bad, because the men will be slain in battle. It says, but afterwards God will restore Jerusalem as his pride and as his glory. You know, the prophecies, they always end up in hope. There's always that hope at the end of it. God will say, I will do this, but you know, there will always be a remnant to bring back, because he has made this covenant with Abraham, so they cannot be destroyed. And in Jeremiah, it says it there that unless the sky disappears, the sun disappears, the moon disappears, the heavens disappear, will there not be Israel as a nation. So while all these elements are in place, Israel will always be there as a nation. So he will always keep a remnant to bring back to the land. So God likens Israel and Judah to a vineyard that he tended, he watered, he put fertilizer, he did everything to make the produce grow into good fruits, but all he got was bad grapes, because the leaders that he put in charge to tend the vineyard didn't tend it properly. It became bad grapes. So what is God going to do? He's going to destroy that vineyard. There's no point keeping it there. There's no point in leaving it to just occupy space unnecessarily, because all it produces is thorns and bristles and nothing tangible, nothing edible. So he said, woe unto those people who add house to house and join field to field, so that there's no space left for anyone else. This is one of the messages that Amos had to go and prophesy to the north. Remember, Amos was from Judah, the south, the same as Isaiah. It was Isaiah's contemporary, but God sent him to the north, Israel, to go and warn the people about the injustice they were doing to the poor, to the widow, to the orphan. They were all crying out to God. God sent Amos the shepherd to go there and warn them about this. And what they were doing then is, a poor man will have a field, a farm, and the farm has been in his family, is here in the middle here. It's been in his family for years. And it was passed down to him from his father, and he's going to pass it on to his son. And this is their livelihood. It's all they have. They eat the produce, they sell the produce. It keeps the family going. And a rich man, as Isaiah is saying here, that you add house to house, you add field to field. You've taken over the whole place. There's no space for anyone else. Woe unto them. So what they will do then, the rich man will buy off the land around the poor man's farm. He will buy off all the land. So now this poor man cannot get to his farm without stepping on the rich man's land. Remember, his farm now is in the middle, and he needs to get to his farm. The rich man will say, if you step on my land, you are trespassing. He will say, my farm is in the middle. It's been there for years, for centuries. I am not going to touch anything that belongs to you. All I want to do is go to my farm, maybe do my cultivate or weed, or put fertilizer, or it's harvest time, and just do that and leave. And the rich man will say, no, I will not let you step on my land. If you do, I will take you before the judge. And you know, back in the day, he's already a poor man. If he's taken before the judge, he will be fined. If he can't have the money, he will be taken as a slave. He has a wife and children to look after. He goes day in, day out, pleading just to go to his farm. The animals are not getting to his crop. He just wants to go there. The rich man says no. Eventually, the rich man says, okay, let's come to an agreement. Let me buy off this farm from you. That's a solution. He says, it's not mine to sell. It was handed down. This is the inheritance we got when the land was being divided. Remember when they crossed over the river Jordan, and after the battle and the conquest under Joshua, the land was divided. This is the land that was divided for my own family. This is my inheritance. It's not mine to sell. The rich man says, that's the only solution. You're not stepping on my land to go to your farm. Sell it. Eventually, he has to sell, and he sells it at a loss. The rich man just gives him whatever he feels like. All these were distressing to God. It was unfair. It's a social injustice. So Isaiah also is talking a bit about this. So now in chapter 6, God now calls Isaiah. This is where we see the call of Isaiah. And Isaiah says that in the year that King Uzziah died, I saw the Lord. So this is when he saw a vision of God seated on his throne, and seraphims were calling to one another, holy, holy, holy is the Lord Almighty. So tradition says Isaiah and King Uzziah were relatives, blood relatives. They were cousins. So naturally, when the king died, he was sad, he mourned, he grieved, he wept, because that was his family. So because some people have made a doctrine out of this, and they say, okay, Isaiah saw the Lord when King Uzziah died, so therefore every Uzziah in my family has to die so I can see the Lord. That's not how it works. They were relatives, blood relatives. You know, this is the traditional story. So he wouldn't have wished Uzziah to die. And there's nowhere in the Bible that says Uzziah was blocking Isaiah from seeing the Lord. So you don't need to pray from all the Uzziahs in your family to die so you can see the Lord. You'll see the Lord regardless. Nobody has to die for you to see the Lord, if the Lord wants to reveal himself to you. So when prophet Isaiah saw the holiness, you know how holy everything is, and these seraphims, he thought, wow, you know, woe is me. That's why the Bible says even our righteousness is like filthy rags before the Lord. He saw this holiness and he thought, woe is me. I am an unclean man with unclean lips. So this is the glory of God. This is his holiness. I'm nothing. I haven't even started. You know, so one of the seraphims took a hot coal from the altar and touched his lips with it to take away his guilt and to cleanse him of his sin. And God says, whom shall I send? Isaiah says, here I am, send me. And God told him that he will send him to them, but they're not going to listen. They will hear, they won't understand. They will see, they will not perceive. Their hearts are hard, their ears are dull. You know, and he made it like that. Otherwise, they may repent. Because what they are doing, they have to be punished for him to be a God of justice. So he's showing mercy by bringing a remnant back, but the sin has to be punished. If not, he will not be a just God. So it's like he's hardening their hearts because he does need to punish the sin. And Isaiah asks that, for how long will their hearts be hardened? How long will they refuse to hear? And God says that until the city lies waste, but he will leave a stump from which will come the holy seed. So until the city lies, but a stump will be left, you know, which will now grow again, because there is hope for a tree cut down, remember. So then there is this Pezah, king of Israel, and Rezin, king of Syria. They invaded Judah. That time Ahaz was king. We can see this in Isaiah 7 And the story is also in 2 Kings 16 from verse 5. You see the full story there. So these two kings from Israel and Syria, they invaded Judah because they wanted Ahaz to form an alliance with them against Assyria, because Assyria was in power at that time, and they wanted to break off their yoke from their necks, that they don't want Assyria to lord over them again. So if these three nations can come together, they might be successful. And Judah doesn't want to join in with Israel and Syria. They don't want to join in with this, their conspiracy. So Ahaz appeals to Tiglath-Pileser III. He is the king of Assyria, for help, saying, come and help us. King of Syria and king of Israel, they want me to join them against you, but I don't want to. So come and help. You see, I'm loyal to you now, so you need to come and help. So the Assyrians, they came and they helped, you know, and they fought and they won against Israel and Syria. And then this king Ahaz, he now presented himself as a vassal to the Assyrian king. You know, so it's like now he is relying on Assyria instead of relying on the Lord. So and then of course Assyria exacts heavy tribute for you know, he has to pay a heavy tribute to Assyria because he's not a vassal, and this led to Assyrian gods being introduced into the temple at Jerusalem. So it's just weird how Ahaz will go there, because he did it against the orders of Isaiah, because Isaiah told him to stand firm and not be afraid of Israel and Syria, that the Lord will take control. But he didn't listen. He went to approach Assyria for help instead of relying on Yahweh to help. You know, even Isaiah told him that, okay, I will give you a sign to prove to you that God will help you against Israel and Syria. But Ahaz said he doesn't want a sign from the Lord. He doesn't want to test God in that way. Isaiah says, I'll give you a sign anyway. A woman will give birth to a son, and he'll be called Emmanuel, which means God with us. And before this boy is old enough to know left from right, Israel and Syria will be broken off. Now, Bible scholars say this statement here about the woman giving birth to a son and his name will be called Emmanuel is not talking about Jesus. They said this, what Isaiah was talking about here, is not about Jesus, that the Christian church have now taken this and say it is talking about Jesus. They're saying that there was already a woman pregnant. So she was already pregnant and she had a son and his name was called Emmanuel. Comment what you think about this. This is what the scholars are saying, what the theologians are saying. They say it's the Christians who now are saying that this is Jesus. So, so God was saying that Assyria will become God's instrument. So Isaiah is married to a woman that's just called prophetess. We don't know her name, but she's called prophetess. And he's a prophet married to a prophetess. He has two sons. The name of his first son is Shear-Jashub. Shear-Jashub, which means a remnant shall return. And the name of his second son is Maher-Shalal-Hashba. Maher-Shalal-Hashba, which means plunder speedeth, spoil hasteth. That is that there will be a sudden attack on Damascus and Syria by the Assyrian army. So the names are, they mean something. They're poignant, you know. And so he says in chapter 8 verse 18 that I and the children whom the Lord had given me are for signs and for wonders in Israel. So what he's saying here is that my sons, the names are for signs and for wonders. The sign of the second the oldest son, Shear Jashub, means a remnant shall return. You see, that's a sign. And the other son, Maha Shalal Hashba, means there will be plunder, there will be a spoil. That, you know, those are signs and for wonders. So that's what he's talking about here, for signs and for wonders in Israel. In Israel, we mustn't leave out that bit, because I've heard Christians praying that me and my children are for signs and for wonders. They leave out the in Israel bit, and they have changed the meaning of this verse. But Isaiah is talking about his sons and their names, signs and for wonders in Israel. So Isaiah, however, he does speak about Jesus. For unto us a child is born, unto us a son is given, and the government will be on his shoulders. He will be called Wonderful Counselor, Mighty God, Everlasting Father, Prince of Peace. The scholars are not disputing this, that he's talking about Jesus. And this is usually on Christmas cards, and, you know, it's a quite popular verse. So God says he will destroy Assyria, and the remnants of Israel will no longer rely on Assyria. You know, they will now rely on God. So remember the king Ahaz, he went to Assyria to ask for help. God will destroy Assyria. They will no longer go to Assyria for help. The Assyria won't be there anyway. They will now have to rely on the Lord. So that's why we should not put our trust in man. You know, don't put your trust in flesh, because they can let you down at any time. There was a lady who was going to be sponsored to come abroad. She lived in Africa, to come abroad by this man. They were doing all the preparations, everything together. It got to the last moment. All he had to do was give her the money so she can go and finalize everything and come over. She went to his house one morning. She heard wailing and crying, and she went there. What happened? The man that she was relying on, he had died overnight. Just like that, in his sleep. The girl was devastated. That was the last stage. And this man just died, you know, and that was the end. She was back to square one. She had to start all over again. So God is saying here, don't put your trust in flesh and blood, who have but a breath of his breath in their nostril. He can take it back anytime. A man can let you down. You'll be so close to somebody, you'll be surprised, you'll be shocked when they suddenly turn against you. You'll be amazed. You'll be thinking that, is this the same person that I was so close to, that I could pour out my heart to, that's not treating me like this? You'll be amazed. You know, I just pray you don't learn the hard way. So a shoot will come up from the stump of Jesse. You know, at that time, a wolf will live with the lamb, leopard with the goat, lion with the ox. The earth will be filled with the knowledge of the Lord. In that day, we will sing and praise the Lord. So here God is saying that there will come a time all the nations will recognize him as the Lord of Lords, as the only true God, the living God, the God of Israel, will be recognized by the whole world as the living God. Nobody will even teach us. We just know. So then Isaiah, there's a prophecy against Babylon. They will be punished for their wickedness. If you remember in Habakkuk, he says that how can God use Babylon to punish Judah when Babylon are even more wicked? And God says, yeah, after I've used them, I will now punish them. So also here in Isaiah, you see some of in the prophecies, they are repeated by other prophets, because God will repeat and repeat. So you will read this prophet and you think, okay, that sounds familiar to another prophet that I've just read. That's because the people are not listening. So God will repeat himself and repeat himself because they are not listening. So God will bring Judah back to their land. And then when they come back, because he has destroyed Babylon, they should sing a taunting song against Babylon and dance. You know, they will sing and say, you have become weak as we were. You have been cast down to the earth. So they should sing a taunting and mocking song about Babylon. There's also a prophecy against the Philistines. They say that don't rejoice. Their fate is coming. So they should not rejoice. A prophecy against Moab. They will wail and lament. Their oppression will come to an end. A prophecy against Damascus. It will no longer be a city. You know, God is saying, woe to the nations that rage. This is the portion of those who plunder Judah, who plunder Jerusalem. They will all be destroyed. There's a prophecy against Cush, that the birds will feed on their carcasses. There is a prophecy against Egypt, that Egyptian will fight against Egyptians, brother will fight against brother. They will become weaklings. Egypt will know and worship the Lord. You know, when he deals with them, then they will know that, yes, God, you are God. You remember when Elijah and the prophets of Baal, when fire came down and answered in answer to Elijah's prayer, all the people worshipped and said, yes, God, he is God. God, yes. So that time, Egypt will recognize God, that yes, he is God. So then Isaiah has to go naked. He goes naked for 3 years, no clothes, no shoes, as a sign for Cush and Egypt. So he goes around naked, no clothes, no shoes. You see, those days prophets went through so much just to give God's word out to the people. Not nowadays. The prophets, most of them, they live in luxury. You know, let's not go there. So that he had to go naked, no clothes, no shoes for 3 years, and he was telling them that this would be a terrible sign for Cush and Egypt. The king of Assyria will capture them, Cush and Egypt, and we make them go naked and bare feet. So that's the sign that's what will happen to those two nations, Cush and Egypt. So now they think that they are powerful, they think they are in power. It's coming to an end. God will use the Assyrians to deal with them. There's also a prophecy against Edom and Arabia, that they will come to an end. A prophecy about Jerusalem, that God has removed his protection from Jerusalem. Instead of them to be fasting and mourning and repenting, they are celebrating, they are dancing, they are feasting. They will be punished. There's a prophecy against Tyre and Sidon, which we also saw in the book of Ezekiel, that they will be destroyed. Their ships, you know, this a commercial port, their ships will be destroyed, it will sink. And even the earth, there is a prophecy against that the earth will not be exempt from the wrath of God. And then but then he says that we will sing praise to God for his mercy and his justice. The justice will be the people going into exile. The mercy will be God bringing the remnant back home. So God will deliver Israel and bring them back together. So God will punish the bad leaders of Israel and Judah, and the false priests and the false prophets for leading the people astray. So woe to those who go down to Egypt for help. They will not be able to help you. You know, Egypt will not be able to help you because God will destroy them. So there was a song we used to sing those days, that, oh sinner sister, you know, where will you run to? Run to your boyfriend. Your boyfriend will be running away. Run to your father. Your father will be running away. Run to your mother. Your mother will be running away. Something like that. So God is saying here that Jerusalem will not be able to depend on Egypt anymore, because he's going to destroy Egypt. So Isaiah writes all these prophecies on a scroll as a witness against Israel, so that they will not say that they did not hear any of this. You know, Jeremiah also wrote the prophecies down. We have the book of Jeremiah. Most of the prophets, they wrote it down. Either they wrote it themselves or they used a scribe. Jeremiah used Baruch, his secretary. And then Sennacherib, he threatens Jerusalem. This we have seen in 2 Chronicles chapter 32. So you can look up the story there. Sennacherib is the king of Assyria, and he has been conquering other nations. He now comes and lays siege against Jerusalem, and he's telling them that don't listen to King Hezekiah. Hezekiah was the king at that time. He's telling you that God will deliver you from my hands. Don't listen to him. He's lying. The other nations that I have captured, did they not have a God? Were they all not looking up to their God? Did I not capture them? So why is he deceiving you? The same way I captured those nations, and I took their gods and burnt it. The same way I am going to come and overthrow Jerusalem. So your God cannot deliver you from my hands. He wrote a letter also and sent it. Hezekiah took this letter, went to the temple and cried and said, God, see what Sennacherib is saying, that I know he has captured a lot of nations. I know he has been successful. But those gods he's talking about, they're not gods. They were made by hands. They're idols. You are the living God. So come and fight for us. Defend us in this. Because, you know, everybody was scared. Assyria were a very strong and powerful nation. And they were wicked. If they caught people, they flayed people, you know, skinned them alive. They impaled people on poles while they were alive. They did such horrendous things that you would rather kill yourself than to be captured by the Assyrians. So people were scared. And then through Isaiah, God told Hezekiah not to be afraid. He's going to fight this battle. And an angel went and slew 185,000 Assyrian soldiers that Sennacherib had brought with him to fight against Jerusalem. So Sennacherib goes home in shame. And while he's serving is in his temple, the idol temple, his sons, his own sons, went there and killed him there. And that was the end of Sennacherib. After this event, King Hezekiah became ill, seriously ill to the point of death. And so he inquires of the Lord, and Isaiah tells him that he will die. He should go and get all his house together, write his will, you know, do what he wants to do, appoint his successor. He's going to die. And Hezekiah weeps before the Lord and reminds God of all what he has done. Remember, I took down the high places. I stopped people from worshipping idols. I turned people's hearts back to you. Remember all of this, O Lord. And he wept. And God told Isaiah to go back and tell the king that he has heard his prayer. He will not die. He has added 15 more years to his life. And a sign will be a shadow going back on the sundial when it's not supposed to be like that. So Hezekiah, he recovers from his sickness. He doesn't, he doesn't die anymore. And some envoys came from Babylon. Marduk Baladan, son of Baladan, king of Babylon. They heard about his sickness and how he almost died. So they came to greet him, you know, thank God you recovered, you didn't die. And Hezekiah took all these envoys around the whole palace and showed them everything that he has. And see, I've got this, and, you know, I've got this. And he showed them everything. And after they left, Isaiah went to King Hezekiah and said, what did you show those people who came? He said, I showed them everything. There was nothing in my palace that I did not show them. And Isaiah told him that you have done a really bad thing. Everything that you showed them, later the Babylonians will come and take everything away. But Hezekiah doesn't repent, like go on his knees to ask for forgiveness that he acted rashly or he acted ignorantly. Instead, he just thinks, well, it's going to happen during his son's time. There will be peace during his time, you know, so let this son deal with it. And this is the end of chapter 39, which the scholars say is the real Isaiah. So Isaiah 1 to 39. So yeah, I just wanted to add that if because at the end tradition says Manasseh killed Isaiah. Manasseh is Hezekiah's son. If Hezekiah had died that time and God did not add that 15 more years to his life, he would not have given birth to Manasseh. You know, and Manasseh ended up killing Isaiah. So I'll talk about that at the end of the book of Isaiah, how Isaiah died at the hands of Manasseh, who was a very wicked king. So anyway, we're going to stop here for today. So we'll see the next part shortly. and then the final part. So you can, when we see the next part, we'll see the difference between this part and the next and the third, to see why the scholars think it wasn't written by one person. It wasn't penned by one author called Isaiah. So God bless you. Thank you so much. I get lots of views on my videos, but I don't get so many comments. So do comment, you know, let's make it interactive, not just me talking to you. So God bless you. Bye. So now, was this part written by the same Isaiah or a second Isaiah, which theologians and Bible scholars call Deutero-Isaiah? Now let's see why they think the original Isaiah, that is Isaiah of Jerusalem, could not have written this part, that is chapters 40 to 55. Now this section, unlike the first section, was written to those in exile. So it's like whoever wrote this book, this part 40 to 55, was with them there in exile. And the theologians and the Bible scholars are saying this was hundreds of years after Isaiah. So he was not there, so he couldn't have written this. It must have been one of his disciples who penned this part and added it to Isaiah's work. They don't dispute chapters 1 to 39. They say, yeah, that was written by the original Isaiah, Isaiah of Jerusalem. But they're saying the rest of the book was not. So this second part, they're saying because the events that happened, there is no way that Isaiah would have known about it, except he was there and he couldn't have been there at that time. So what do you think? I'm going to make my own comments at the end, but what do you think? You know, comment in the comment box and let us know your thing. So let's have a debate about this. So anyway, so Isaiah, because if it's the original Isaiah or it's the disciples or whoever wrote the rest of the book, maintain the name Isaiah. So I am going to say Isaiah. So Isaiah was now talking to the exiles, the children of Judah in exile, saying, you know, comfort ye, they will be comforted. You know, he's bringing them good news from God, and they should hope in the Lord. If they do, they will renew their strength. You know, they will soar like eagles, and they will not grow weary. They will walk and not be tired. And God is telling the exiles, those in Babylon, to not to fear and to put their trust in him. He says everything that happened to them was down to him. God was the one who allowed it to happen. So there's nothing that happens that God did not permit in his own way and for his own reason and purpose. So if you just remember that when you're going through anything, God allowed it because he had a reason for it. You know, I know that now because of what happened to me and what I'm doing now. So I know God allowed it. He permitted it. He used that person to bring me out so God can take me in. So God here is challenging the idols to prophesy, or let them even do something good or even something bad. You know, he says they are absolutely worthless. These idols are worthless. They are unable to give counsel. They are unable to answer. Their images are wind and confusion. You know, the images can be burnt and the ash can be scattered all over the place. They're just totally nonsense. So in chapter 42, God introduces the servant of the Lord, and he will put his spirit on this servant. The servant will be fair and he will be just. He will not break a bruised reed. This we can also see in Matthew 12:18 to 21. So you can see this part here is speaking about Jesus. The scholars do not dispute this. He's speaking about our Lord and Savior Jesus Christ. I doubt even then that Isaiah knew what he was talking about. If he knew the enormous, what this part actually meant, if he knew that he was talking about Jesus Christ, he probably did not even realize it himself. But here Jesus is spoken about, and God is saying that he will not give his glory to anyone, not to idols, not to any man. who handed Israel and Judah over to the enemies. God is asking them. He said it was him. Was it not I, the Lord, against whom you have sinned? He handed them over, not any idols, not any man, but he himself handed them over. He said, however, they will sing to the Lord a new song. They will sing a song of praise. But those who are saying to the images, you are our gods, they will be in utter shame. They will be utterly disgraced. Those who are relying on idols, those who are relying on flesh, the arm of flesh. So God is saying that they should not fear. Israel have been redeemed. God has now redeemed them. God is with them even though they are in exile. So when they are passing through the water, when they are passing through the fire, he is going to be with them. He has not abandoned them. He has not forsaken them. God is still with them even though they are in exile, because all this that happened it's his doing. He's the one who orchestrated it, but he's still with them. He has not forsaken them. And even if you remember back in the book of Ezekiel that we have done, God's glory left the temple in Jerusalem and he joined the people in exile. So even though they were in exile, God did not leave them. And remember when Moses said, if your presence does not come with us, I'm not going anywhere. So God still followed his people. Even when they were in the wilderness wanderings, God was still there. And he's still with us today because he's omnipresent. So even if when we're going through a very low point in our life, just remember that God is there with us. He hasn't forsaken us at all. He's there. When we're going through good tidings, good news, God is there. Likewise, when we're going through our downtime, which we'll all face, God is still with us in there. So God is telling them that Egypt and Cush and Sheba have been taken as a ransom for Israel. So they will go back. Their ransom has been paid by these heathen and wicked nations. So God is saying he will bring them all back together, and all the nations will know that there is no other God. He is the living God. When they see what he's going to do, because now it seems like it's impossible. They can't come back together. How is that going to be? They're captured. They're in a foreign land. They're not at home. They're scattered all over the place. God says when the other nations see this, they will know that yes, he has already foretold it and it came to pass. Then all nations will know that he is the true God, not those idols that they are worshiping, that have eyes and cannot see. They can't speak, they can't give counsel, they can't do anything. You use your hand to make this idol. You bow before it, you say, this is my God. God says that day, all nations will know that he is the Lord of Lords. So he says for Israel's sake, God is going to destroy Babylon. And Israel should remember how he brought them out of Egypt, how he parted the Red Sea, how he conquered the enemies before them, how they were settled in the land. So how he gave them manna to eat, how he brought water from the rock. They should remember all of this. So now it seems like they are in exile again, but he will bring them out and he will take them back home to the promised land. He says he will do a new thing in their life. He will make a way in the wilderness where there seems to be no way. So even if you are going through a situation where it seems you can't get out of this is just impossible, remember that God will make a way where there seems to be no way. He will be with you through the waters, through the fire. He will never leave you. He will not forsake you. He's the same yesterday, today, and forever. So God is saying that the animals, they honor God because he gives them food and he gives them water. Israel have not honored him. He gives them food and he gives them water, but they don't honor him. Instead, they have made him tired and weary with their sins. But he has not made them tired and weary with sacrifices. Because if we look back at the Levitical law, the sacrificial law, God made a way for people. He says, okay, if you cannot afford a cow, you bring this. If you cannot afford that, you bring a lamb. If you cannot afford a lamb, you bring a pigeon. If you cannot afford a pigeon, you bring a flour, grain offering. So God made that provision so that people will not be put under unnecessary burden, under unnecessary bondage. And God is now saying here that he hasn't put burden. He has not made the people weary with their sacrifices, but they have made him weary with their sins. So he's saying he will pour out his spirit on all flesh. You know, this has been spoken about also by other prophets. Everybody will know that he is the Lord. Everybody will belong to him. He is the first and the last. He is the Alpha and the Omega. Apart from him, he says, there is no God. Who is like him? He's asking. You know, let everybody proclaim his name, that he is the Lord of Lords. So he says the idols, they are for nothing. Those who speak up for them, they are blind, just as the idols are blind. The blacksmith and the carpenters, they made this idol themselves. They carved it, they fashioned it, and they put it and worshiping it and saying, save me, you are my God. It says, isn't this foolishness? When can't they even stop to think that I use this wood to cook? I make my roast on it, I eat, and I will now take the rest of the wood and make an idol and say it is my God. That can't they even stop to think, you know, that why should I bow down before a block of wood? He says none of them think about this, but they call it their God. He says Israel will return to him. They have been redeemed. God has redeemed them. He did not sell them with money, so he will redeem them back without money. They have been redeemed. And here God now mentions the name of Cyrus, that Cyrus is his shepherd. God is going to use him to accomplish all that he pleases. Cyrus is going to say of Jerusalem that you can go back home, go and rebuild your temple, go and rebuild your walls, go and rebuild your city, and pray for me. And we can see this in the book of Ezra. In Ezra, God, Cyrus, the Persian king, after the Persian had overthrown Babylon, they now told all the nations that Babylon had conquered that they can go back home. And so this prophecy came to pass. This is also one of the reasons why the theologians are saying Isaiah couldn't have written this. How could he have known what would happen hundreds of years later? You know, so that's also one of the reasons they are giving. What do you think? Comment below and let me know. So God says that he has appointed Cyrus. Cyrus is mentioned by name. Even though Cyrus is a heathen, he doesn't yet know the Lord. God will give him success. God will be with him. And by this, people will know that there's no other God beside the God of Israel. All nations will run to God. Every knee will bow and every tongue will confess and say that he is the Lord of Lords. After him, there is no other. So the fall of Babylon, their nakedness will be exposed, their shame will be uncovered. God used them because he was angry with his people, Judah. So he used the Babylonians to punish Judah, and they overdid it. They were too heavy-handed. God says what they did was wicked. Even the old people, they put heavy yoke on them. They did not have compassion. They did not have pity. Because God used them doesn't mean that they should not behave the way they behaved. So it reminded me of when I was I read the story of Corinne ten Boom. You know, they helped the Jews to escape, you know, during the time they were being persecuted. And so they were caught, that family were caught. They found out that they were helping the Jews to escape. And Corinne's sister, Betty, I think, or Bessie, I can't really remember. They were in the concentration camp, and she was sick, she was weak because there was no food, and she was in agony, and they were asking them to do this hard labor, and she couldn't. Each time she carried the load, she would fall under the weight. Each time she carried the load, she would fall under the weight. She couldn't manage it. So the guard was, however, saying the sister should carry that load. And she looked up at the guard and said, she can't carry this, she's very, very weak. And he forced her. The sister eventually died. So this is the kind of wickedness. Even if God had put those people there at that time for any other reason, he was wicked. He showed not an ounce of mercy. He overdid his hand. God says he will punish Babylon for that. Even though he sent them, they should not have been that wicked, that horrible to people. So God is saying that he will not become a widow, neither will he become childless. But Babylon, they will suffer it. So what God is saying here, that, because the Israel are known as God's bride, so he's not going to become a widow. That means that Israel are not going to disappear off the face of the earth, and he will not become childless. So Israel are not going to disappear. But Babylon, they will become widow and they become childless because of their wickedness. because disaster will come upon them suddenly. And this happened when the Persian Empire overtook Babylon. Nobody believed that Babylon can fall. They were a very powerful empire. They ruled the world at the time. No one believed it, but it happened. And Persia were even a lesser nation than Babylon, and that happened. And if you remember the image in Nebuchadnezzar's dream, when Daniel interpreted it, the dream, that was it, because the gold was the head, which was Babylon, and the next one was the inferior silver, and that was Persia. And Persia overthrew Babylon eventually. So that dream came to pass. It was a prophecy from the Lord. So God is saying that Israel will be restored, except a mother can forget. Even if a mother can forget her baby, God is not going to forget Israel. And the first time I read this, I thought a mother can't forget her baby. That's impossible. But now that I'm grown up, I know that a mother can forget her baby. I've seen lots of dysfunctional families split up with the mother saying that she never wants to see the child again. The child should go away, I've disowned you. And the child, moms and kids taking themselves to court, over some petty issue. And in the court, they will say that they will never speak to each other again and stuff like that. So it does happen that a mom and a child can split, and they will never speak again until one dies. They will never talk again. But God is saying that even though that can happen, He will not forget Israel. So He says that even when they are restored back to their land, that land will become too small for them. They will need a bigger land to become too small. So now it seems like, what is He talking about? We're just a few. We're a remnant here. How can that land be too small for us? But God is saying that that's what will happen. That all nations will then agree that Israel's God is God when they see that the land is too small for them. So He's now asking that, can plunder be taken away from a warrior? Or can captives be taken from the fierce? And God is saying yes, He can. Because the Israel are the plunder, the captives from Babylon has taken everything away from Israel, have taken the people. But God is saying that they can still come out. He can still rescue them from the hands of the fierce. God has not divorced Israel, and He has not sold them. So they will come back. He reminded them that Abraham was only one man when God called him, and he grew into a multitude. His descendants are like the sand on the seashore. They can't even be counted. So He said, God who dried up the Red Sea, who brought them out of Egypt, almost destroyed Egypt, He will do it again. So they should not fear mortal. So this is like a second Exodus. The first one was when they came out of Egypt, and this Exodus is them coming out of Babylon to go back home. So God has removed His cup of wrath from Jerusalem. They will no longer have to drink that bitter drink. He has removed it. He has forgiven them. So He's saying that when the news comes that they have been released, the watchman will shout for joy. The runner will bring good tidings. So it says, the feet of those who bring tidings, good feet, happy feet, happy feet. Those who bring good tidings, there will be great news. On that day, everybody will be rejoicing that they can finally go back home. They can finally go back home. All these prophecies at the time would seem unlikely, that, what are you talking about? But when it did happen, they were like those who dreamed that, we have been released from captivity. They could not believe it themselves. So here also He talks about the suffering servant, which the Jews do not believe is Jesus. He is Jesus. The theologians are not disputing this. The Bible scholars are not disputing this, but the theologians don't think it's Jesus. So here the suffering servant was introduced. He was talking about Jesus, that He had no beauty that anyone could see. He was despised, He was spat on, He was rejected by mankind. He was a man of sorrows, man of sorrows, Lamb of God, by His own betrayed. The sin of man and wrath of God has been on Jesus laid. Oh, that rugged cross, my salvation, where Your love poured out over me. Now my soul cries out, hallelujah, praise and honor unto Thee. A lovely song, Man of Sorrows. So here, the suffering servant is a man of sorrows. He was rejected by those he created, those he came to save. He was oppressed and afflicted, yet he did not open his mouth. He did not say a word. He was wounded for our transgressions. He was bruised for our iniquities. By his stripes we are healed. God will restore Jerusalem after a brief abandonment. He abandoned them briefly. It's like a husband and wife going through a trial, separation. They're not divorced, but they're separated. That's how God saw it. That it was a trial, it was just an abandonment, but he's now bringing them back together. The trial separation is over. So, and God says that he swore that, as he said after the flood, Noah's flood, that he will never again destroy the earth with water. Here now he's also making another covenant that though the mountains be shaken and the hills removed, God's unfailing love will not be shaken from Israel. He will always love them. So even if the mountains are removed, even if the earth is shaken, his love for Israel will not shake. So that was another covenant that he made. So he made the first one. We saw the sign, the rainbow. This is a covenant that he made. So those who are saying that the covenant with Israel is over, the church is now the new Israel, I don't think you've read this. Go and read chapter 54 of Isaiah. God is saying here that his unfailing love for them will not be shaken. It will not be removed. They will forever be his people. And he also made that covenant with Abraham, in the book of Genesis, that they will forever be his people. He will forever be their God. And in the book of Malachi, he said that it's because of the love I have for you, sons of Jacob. That's why you are not yet consumed. If not for that, by now I would have destroyed you. But because of the love, the covenant I have, that's why you haven't been consumed. And he hates divorce, so he's not going to divorce his children. So I don't know where that the church is the new Israel came from. I mean, I'm not a Jew, I'm a Christian, and I should be saying, yeah, but no. The Bible does not say that. The Bible doesn't say that the church has replaced Israel. The covenant is still there with Israel. God has not broken it. He won't be God if he breaks his covenant just like that. He has made it, and it's going to be there forever. So even if the mountains shake, the earth goes, his covenant with Israel will still stand. So there you go. So he's telling them that they will return home. Tyranny and terror will be far from them. If they are attacked, it won't be by him. It will not be by him. So and if anyone attacks them, they will surrender to them. He hasn't sent any nation, and he will not send any nation to go and attack his children. He says no weapon that is formed against them will prevail. Any tongue that rises against them in judgment, they will condemn. This is all the promises that God made with Israel, and is still in effect today. It has not expired. The same way the blood of Christ has not expired. Because I remember one time I heard when a pastor said people should bring money. We're going to use that money to pray for the blood of Jesus to redeem us back again. And I'm thinking, like, seriously, when did the blood of Jesus expire that we now need to bring money to come and redeem our souls? It's just so wrong. It's just wrong. So the covenant God made with Israel has not expired. It will be there from everlasting to everlasting. So then in the final chapter, in this part 55, he's saying that it's an invitation. It's House Fires also sang this song, Come to the River. Come to the water, all who are thirsty, come and drink. Come to the table, all who are hungry, come and feast. Those who are weary, those who are needy, come receive. Come to the river, come to the river, taste and see. God has not given me the gift of singing. So this is an invitation that those who are thirsty, those who are weary, those who are needy, those who are lacking, come and taste and see. Come and fill yourselves, drink the water, you will never be thirsty again. Come and eat, come and feast. He says that it's an everlasting covenant that he made that promise with David. You remember when David in 2 Samuel said he wanted to build the temple, and God said no. His hands are bloody, but his son will build it. But God, however, made a covenant with David that he will forever be with him. There will always be someone on the throne from his line. He will not forsake him. So this is his people, from David's line. So he's saying that promise that he had made with David is still standing. So the people should turn to him. It's an invitation. It says turn to him, because God's ways are not our ways. His thoughts are not our thoughts. As the earth is far from the heaven, so are God's thoughts far from us. So his words will not return back to him without accomplishing that with which he has sent it. As the rain does not return back, it waters the ground. As the snow does not return back, it stays on the ground until it thaws and it melts. So also God's words will not return back void. They have to accomplish that which he has sent it. So this is the end of this part of Isaiah, 2nd Isaiah, Deutero-Isaiah. So what do you think? Do you think original Isaiah penned this bit, or do you think it was penned by a different person who just took on, he didn't put his name to the book, so he just penned it and added it to Isaiah's work? I will say what I think at the end. So I see you in the next part, the final part of Isaiah. God bless you greatly. Bye. Now, scholars strongly believe, that Isaiah was written by 3 people, so 3 Isaiahs. They say chapter 1 to 39 was written by the original Isaiah, that is Isaiah of Jerusalem. 40 to 55 was written by a second Isaiah, whom they call Deutero-Isaiah, because they said the original Isaiah could not have known about all those events. Those were events that happened in exile, in Babylon, and this is years after Isaiah. Now this final part, which is 56 to 66, they say was written by a third Isaiah, whom they refer to as Trito-Isaiah, because this part was written after the exile, post-exilic, after they left Babylon and went back to Jerusalem. So this Isaiah, Trito-Isaiah, is now addressing the exiles back home. So the scholars are saying the original Isaiah could not have written about these later parts, but the first part is about events happening, the warnings, the reprimands. So yeah, he wrote that one. So we're now looking at Trito-Isaiah. So here Isaiah offers hope to the people who have returned to Jerusalem. They are despondent, they are downcast, they think God is still cross with them. They're still being punished for their sins because they've gone back to devastation, they've gone back to rack and ruin. And we'll also see this in the books of Haggai and Zechariah, which I have taught. Incidentally, Haggai and Zechariah are contemporaries of Trito-Isaiah. So if we go back a bit in the book of Haggai, the people were saying that it's not yet time to rebuild the temple. They got back, the whole place was in ruins. So they said before they rebuild the temple, the economy should be buoyant and there should be harvest. They should start building their own houses first. They should have their businesses set up. Everything should be flourishing before they build the temple. So this was in the book of Haggai. So that's what the people were saying, it's not yet time, it's not yet time. So Prophet Haggai was telling the people that things are not working. You're not having harvest, you're planting, but you're harvesting a little. You're wearing clothes, but you're still cold because there's holes in your clothes. there's holes in your pockets and your wallets, so you're not having enough money. You're saying that until things get better, before you start building the temple. But things will not get better until you build the temple. So you do have to do this first. Seek ye first the kingdom of God, and all other things will be added onto you. So you can't wait and say until things get better before we start building the temple. He said, no, you're saying until things get better, but you're building your paneled homes. Everything is flourishing in your homes. Your businesses are booming, but you're saying until things get better. How much better do you want it to be? Things won't get better. Things will be getting worse until you build the temple. So this was the message of Haggai to the exiles, returned back now to Jerusalem. And Zechariah also was saying the same thing to the people, that they cannot leave the temple unbuilt and be doing their own businesses. And in the book of Ezra, which I've also taught, we will see Zechariah mustering up the people, building up their courage and their morale, and saying, come on, let's build the temple. Come on, get up, all of you. And the people got up as one. They heard the word of the Lord, and they started rebuilding. And under Zerubbabel, the governor, that was how the temple was rebuilt and finished, and they had the temple back, because they gone back to Jerusalem, but they had not recommenced the worship, which they probably were not doing during their time of exile in Babylon. So they need to come back, not just rebuild the social and economic aspect of life, but also the worship, which should even be first. So in this part of Isaiah, Trito-Isaiah is also encouraging the people, because they feel God is still upset with them, because things are not happening as they thought. Because all they thought was when they go back, everything will just be back to normal. The prophets have said when they come back, nations will look towards them and there will be harvest, and it didn't seem to be happening. So Trito-Isaiah is saying that no, God is no longer cross with you. He has forgiven you. He has removed his wrath as he promised. They should be patient, and they should just keep on rebuilding the temple, just do what they're supposed to do. So he reassured the exiles that God's punishment had ended, and if they remain faithful, God will reward them. They will become like a light to other nations, which will draw other people onto them, so much so that they will have a relationship with the God of Israel, because they will see that things are working, things are prospering for the Israelites. They also want to have a part. How people are, once there's the gold rush, all people rushed there to go and get gold. When they were digging up mines and they were finding gold, people all rushed there. Some people killed themselves, some people died in this rush. Wherever there's this thing, some years ago, a bank I was banking with was giving bonuses. So many people opened accounts because they wanted the share of these bonuses. It got so much that the bank had to say, okay, that's it, no more new accounts until all this is finished, so that people will see how God has blessed them, and they will also want to come and know their God and hold on to them and say, we want to serve this God that you are serving. This is how a Christian's life should be anyway. People should look at us and say, we want to know the God you are serving. Introduce me to this God of yours, because things just seem to be working for you. So a Christian's life should advertise the glory of God. We should not be out there looking haggard. And some Christians don't smile. They're just too holy, too righteous. They don't smile. They don't greet you. They just feel like everyone are sinners. They're the only righteous people. It should not be like that. It shouldn't be like that. So their sorrow was expressed over the sins that they did. They were still sorry about it. Because if they hadn't done all that, they wouldn't have been carted off in the first place. So, and then in this part of Isaiah, we can also see that God is all inclusive. So he was talking about the foreigners and the eunuchs that had been exempted in Deuteronomy, that if they observe all his covenants, if they obey the Sabbath, observe the Sabbath and the festivals, the sacrifices, he will accept it from them. So it became open now to the Gentiles. So it's not just the Jews, it's now all inclusive, and that's how our God is. I heard a story of a prostitute who was returning back from one of her clients. It was a Sunday morning. She'd been out all night, plying her trade, and on the way going home Sunday morning, she just felt led to go into a church and pray. But when she got to the door, the ushers would not let her in. That, sorry, we don't want your sort in here. So she walked away. So I doubt like that woman would ever go into a church again. But she's the sort that Jesus came for. She's the sort that should have been allowed into the church to meet with the Lord. But churches nowadays, you have to be good to be there. You have to be obedient. It's always yes sir, yes pastor, yes pastor. Don't you dare oppose your pastor. If not, you'll be out that door. Don't you dare have an opinion of your own. They'll be like, no, she's rebellious. You'll be out that door. But that's churches shouldn't be meant for righteous people who told the lie. It's meant for me, people like me. God will meet me there, change me from the inside out. So, and then this Trito-Isaiah is also talking about the watchmen, that they are blind, they are failing to lead the people to follow God. They are failing to warn them against idolatry and stuff like that. He said he calls them blind and dumb shepherds. So watchmen, they have that task, that huge responsibility that God has given them to warn the people. Once they warn the people and the people don't turn against away, then they are free. But if they don't warn and they keep quiet, the blood will be required out of the hand of that watchman. And that's all Christians, not just pastors. That's all Christians. And he talked about the true fasting. That true fasting should be with true, it should be accompanied by genuine repentance and express concern for the poor. But the fasting that the people were doing, which Zechariah also talked about, ends in quarreling and strife. The food, instead of that food that they miss, when you miss a food because you are fasting, maybe you miss your breakfast, that food should be given to the poor. If it's your lunch you miss, it should be given to the poor. But what people normally do is they will pack that breakfast, they will pack the lunch, they will pack the dinner, leave everything on the table. Then when they break the fast, they will not eat everything. That is not a fast. That's not the fast that God is talking about. He's saying your fast, you need to look after the poor, look after the widow, look after those who are needy. That's the fast he's calling. But people, when they are doing that fast, they're all pious and everything. Because they're hungry, they're hungry. But immediately they break the fast. The Trito-Isaiah was saying that then they go and fight with people. It's like you now go up to the person and say, yes, now I have my energy back. What was it you were saying earlier? Repeat it now to my face if you dare. And then they start fighting and quarreling after the fast. He said that is not the fast that God is talking about. And this is what Zechariah also was talking about when they asked that should we still be fasting because we are now back home. We were fasting then because we were in exile, but we are now back home. And he said, even that fast, who was it for? It was for yourselves. You are not fasting for the Lord. I know a pastor, he can fast for 30 days non-stop. 30 days. He is really good. But if you offend him, you are finished. He does not forgive. And yet he can fast. 30 days is fasting. This is what the Bible is saying about all those fasting. Who is it for? Because it's definitely not for God. If you are doing all these outward works of, so people can see, or what is it for? I mean, I can understand if you are fasting so that you can lose weight. But if you are doing it from a spiritual point of view and you don't forgive people, you oppress the poor, then it's pointless. It's just a waste of time. So he talks here about the fasting and the piety of the people, that they should do it with a right heart, a right motive, and not just because they're observing a spiritual exercise, because a fast was called, so let's just fast, but your heart's not in it. You don't repent, you don't change. All we can see is that you've lost a pound or two in weight, and that's it. That's not a fast. And then there was the communal sin and the communal lament over their sin, over what they did. But God is not saying that they should arise and shine, for their light has come. So Jerusalem's days of darkness will now be over. God is about to bring a new dawn, to them, to Israel, pagan nations will be drawn to the city, bearing all kinds of gifts. And we also saw this in the other parts of Isaiah and Jeremiah and Ezekiel. They all talked about how after the exile, people will come bearing gifts, and everything. People will be drawn to them. Then they will know that God is the living God, that He's not an idol, and He is the only God. So we can see this monotheism in the book of Isaiah, that God of Israel, He alone is God. All the other gods are idols. They're made by human hand. They're just made by people. They're not real. So he talks about that. And then there's the year of the Lord's favor. Jesus read this part in Luke 4:16-22 when he was in the temple. So he read this. What he read is from the book of Isaiah 61. I will read it. I'm reading from the NIV Bible, Quest Study Bible. The Spirit of the Sovereign Lord is on me, because the Lord has anointed me to proclaim good news to the poor. He has sent me to bind up the brokenhearted, to proclaim freedom for the captives, and release from darkness for the prisoners, to proclaim the year of the Lord's favor and the day of vengeance of our God, to comfort all who mourn, and provide for those who grieve in Zion, to bestow on them a crown of beauty instead of ashes, the oil of joy instead of mourning, and a garment of praise instead of a spirit of despair. So Jesus read not all of that, but that's what he was reading in the temple, Isaiah 61. And then after Jesus read it, he said, today you will see this fulfilled. So this was Jesus' mission as the servant Messiah. So that was what he came to do, to set people free from their bondage, to heal the sick, to open the eyes of the blind, to draw us close to the Father. This is what Jesus came to do. So that's what was written there. And then in chapter 62, the exiles were wondering if God has abandoned them, and God reassured them that they will no longer be called desolate or forsaken. He has given them a new name, which is Hephzibah, which means my delight. So they will no longer be called forsaken, because nations were still thinking that they've been forsaken by God. And even the people themselves thought they've been abandoned by God. But he says, no, your name has been changed. You are now called my delight, my joy. That's what you are. Like some parents have a favorite kid, even if that parent is very furious, raging with madness, and that child comes and says, mommy or daddy, stop. They just stop, and they tell the other party, you are lucky. My child, you are lucky. So God is saying that, no, now you be called my delight, my joy. I have changed your name. No longer will you be called forsaken. And then he said that the watchmen at the gates should remind God daily, I give no rest to God until he re-establishes Jerusalem. So that's the work of the watchmen, that they should constantly keep on reminding God that you promise to re-establish Jerusalem. You promise to re-establish Jerusalem. They must not keep quiet. So it's similar to the proverb, the parable that Jesus told in Luke 11:5-8 about the friend who went to knock at his friend's door at night, and he knocked and knocked and knocked, that he's received a visitor, he needs something, food or something to give his guest. And Jesus was saying that even if the friend inside doesn't want to get up because he's tired, he's late, he's in bed, because of the shameless knocking of his friend, he will get up just so he can have some peace. That, okay, take the bread and go so I can sleep. So because of the shameless knocking, he will get up. So here the watchmen are called to keep on reminding God that he promised to reestablish Jerusalem. He promised to reestablish Jerusalem. Until God does it, they mustn't keep quiet. So this also is a lesson for us Christians. If there's something you're waiting on the Lord for, don't give up. Just keep on and on praying. Keep on praying. There might be a reason why he's not answered, or it seems like he's not answered at that time. Maybe he's got something else in store for you, but just keep on praying. Don't give up. keep on and keep on and keep on saying, God, you know, how long am I going to wait? God, answer my prayers. Just keep on, and he will answer you in his own way. So, and then they now recount God's goodness, how he brought them out from Egypt, how God opened the Red Sea, how he gave them the promised land, how he is strong and mighty, how he drove out all the enemies, how he conquered all the enemy nations. They recounted everything that God has done. And in 65, God is saying that he is ready to respond to Israel, but they are the ones who are not yet ready to reach out to him. So you turn to God and he will turn to you. And then the final chapter is saying that Jerusalem is going to be purified and they're going to be glad. And here Jerusalem is imaged as a mother who is about to give birth and looking after her babies and comforting those who are grieving and mourning. And God will give good gifts to his people, and their happiness will be a witness to all other nations. That's their happiness. And this, beloved, is the end of the book of Isaiah, and also the end of the summaries of the Old Testament. So I thank you all so much that you've been with me. It's been 9 months that I've done this. Started the Old Testament summaries in June 2018. It's now March 2019, and I've finished today. So I thank you all so much. I said I will tell you my own thoughts about whether the Isaiah was written by 3 or 2 Isaiahs, but no one's commented, so I don't think you want to know. If people are interested, if you comment, I'll make a short, maybe 5-minute video about what I think, if Isaiah was written by 1, 2, or 3 Isaiahs. God bless you. Thank you. Bye. I am so happy.